The ballroom doors slammed shut behind them, but the echoes of Emily's shrieks still bounced off the crystal chandeliers. I stood frozen on that stage, my thrift store dress suddenly feeling like a remere, while 200 guests stared at me with a mix of horror, pity, and something that looked dangerously like respect. My Aunt Margaret was the first to move. She pushed through the crowd, her designer heels clicking like gunshots on the marbly floor, and grabbed my wrist so hard I felt the bones grind together. "What have you done?" she hissed, her breath hot and sour against my cheek. "Do you have any idea what you've just destroyed?" I pulled my arm back, maybe too roughly, because she stumbled and caught herself on the edge of the podium. "I didn't destroy anything, Aunt Margaret. I just showed everyone what was already there." She opened her mouth to argue, but a man in a gray suit stepped between us. I recognized him as Derek's lawyer, a weasel-faced man named Prescott who had drafted the documents that transferred ownership of my father's company to a holding company I'd never heard of. His eyes were cold, calculating, the eyes of a man who was already spinning damage control in his head. "Miss Risen," he said, his voice oily and smooth. "I strongly advise you to refrain from making any further statements. This matter is clearly a case of defamation, unauthorized use of private footage, and potentially criminal harassment. My client will be pursuing all legal avenues." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud, and the sound riled me. It was a hollow, bitter sound that seemed to echo in the vast silence of the ballroom. "Defamation? You're threatening me with defamation? Your client has been stealing from my family for 2 years. He manipulated my father into making bad investments, siphoned the money into offshore accounts, and left me to face the creditors. I have bank statements, Prescott. I have emails. I have recordings of every single conversation I've had with your client for the past 18 months. Prescott's face didn't change, but I saw a muscle twitch in his jaw. "That's a very serious accusation." "It's not an accusation. It's evidence. And I've already handed it over to the district attorney's office." The silence that followed was so thick I could taste it. Someone dropped a fork, and the clatter sounded like an explosion. I saw my aunt's face go pale, saw the color drain from her cheeks like water from a sink. The old family friends who had been whispering were now staring openly, their mouths hanging slightly open. The lawyers and business partners were exchanging glances, the kind of glances that said they were recalculating their positions, trying to figure out which side was going to win this war. I stepped down from the stage, my heels clicking against the polished wood. The crowd parooed for me like the Red Sea, and I walked through them with my head held high. I could feel their eyes on my back, could hear the murmur of questions, the frantic tapping of phones as people texted everyone they knew. The news was already spreading, I knew that. By morning, every newspaper in the city would have the story. The Risen scandal. The engagement parody that ended in disaster. The sister who flipped the script. I made my way to the exit, my hands trembling but my steps steady. I had planned this moment for so long, rehearsed it in my head 1,000 times, but nothing had prepared me for the actual feeling of it. The adrenaline was wearing off, and in its place was a cold, creeping exhaustion. I wanted to go home. I wanted to lock myself in my tiny apartment and sleep for a week. But when I pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped into the hotel lobby, I saw a man leaning against the front desk. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that was just rooting to gray at the temples. He wore a simple black suit, no tie, and his eyes were the color of wet slate. I knew him. Everyone in the city knew him. His name was Marcus Webb, and he was the best investigative journalist in the state. "Ella Risen," he said, pushing off from the desk and walking toward me. "I was hoping to catch you before you left." I stopped in my tracks, my heart suddenly racing again. "What do you want, Mr. Webb?" He smiled, but it wasn't a smile. It was the smile of a man who smelled a story. "I think you know what I want. I've been digging into the Risen family finances for the past 6 months. I know about the shell companies. I know about the offshore accounts. I even know about the insurance policy your father took out 6 weeks before he died. The blood drained from my face. How do you know about that? I have my sources. He pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket and flipped it open. What I don't know is who your accomplice is. You didn't get that hotel footage on your own. Someone helped you. Someone inside the hotel, or maybe someone closer to the family. Who was it? I read at him, my mind racing. I had been so refull. I had used burner phones, paid in cash, met my source in empty parking lots at midnight. I had covered my tracks with the meticulousness of a surgeon. But Marcus Webb was not an ordinary journalist. He was the man who had exposed the mayor's corruption, who had broken the story of the pharmaceutical company that was poisoning its own patients. He was relentless, and he was dangerous. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, my voice flat that he chuckled and closed his notebook. Of course you don't. But here's the thing, Ella. I've been following this story for a long time, and I've been waiting for someone to do exactly what you did tonight. You're not just a victim. You're a fighter. And I think you're going to need a friend in the coming weeks, because Derek and Emily aren't going to take this lying down. They're going to come after you with everything they've got. I can handle myself. Can you? He raised an eyebrow. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're standing on a pretty shaky foundation. Your sister has already called the police. She's claiming you hacked into the hotel security system. She's got the hotel manager in her pocket, and he's willing to swear you broke into their server room last week. If that goes through, you're looking at a minimum of 3 years in prison. My stomach dropped. I hadn't counted on that. Emily had always been ruthless, but this was a new level. She was going to try to frame me for a crime I didn't commit. She was going to try to put me in jail so I couldn't testify against Derek, so I couldn't expose the fraud. It was exactly the kind of move I would have expected from her, but hearing it out loud made it feel terrifyingly real. What do you want? I asked, my voice rely above a whisper. I want the truth, Marcus said. All of it. I want to write the story that brings down the whole house of cards. And I want you to help me do it. In exchange, I'll make sure the police know the truth about that footage. I'll make sure the hotel manager recants his statement. I'll protect you, Ella. But I need your trust. I looked at him for a long moment. The lobby was empty now except for the two of us and a bored-looking bellhop who was pretending not to listen. The chandeliers overhead cast a soft gold light on Marcus's face, and I could see the hardy lines of his features, the determination in his eyes. He was a man who had spent his entire life chasing justice, and he believed I was the key to unlocking the biggest story of his career. Okay, I said finally. You'll have your story. But I'm not going to tell you everything at once. I have conditions. He nodded slowly. I figured you would. I want protection from my source. I don't see what you have to do, but his name never appears in any article you write. He's the only reason I was able to get that footage, and if Derek and Emily find out who he is, he'll be destroyed. Agreed. And I want your word that you won't publish anything until I say so. I'm not going to hand you everything I have and let you run with it before I'm ready. This is my fight, Marcus. I've been planning it for 8 months, and I'm not going to let anyone, not even you, dictate how it plays out. He extended his hand. You have my word. I shook it, and I felt the rough calluses on his palm. This was a man who had built his career on promises like this. Whether he would keep it was another question entirely, but for now, I had no choice but to trust him. The hotel doors opened behind me, and I turned to see my Aunt Margaret rushing toward us. Her face was flushed, her PRLS swinging wildly as she ran. Ella, she shouted, her voice echoing across the lobby. Ella, stop. I need to talk to you. Marcus gave me a look, a quick flash of warning, and then he melted away into the shadows of the lobby, disappearing behind a potted palm. I stood alone as my aunt reached me, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Ella, please, she said, grabbing my hands. Please don't do this. You're going to destroy everything. Your father's legacy, the family name, everything we've worked for. I know Derek and Emily have done terrible things, but this isn't the way to fix it. We can work something out. We can negotiate. I pulled my hands away from hers. Negotiate what you've known about this for months, Aunt Margaret. You knew what they were doing, and you didn't say a word. You stood by while they ruined me, while they took everything from me. And now you want to negotiate. She opened her mouth to respond, but the lobby doors burst open again, and this time it was the police. 2 officers in blue uniforms, their faces stern and unreadable. They walked straight toward me, and I felt my heart sink into my stomach. Ella ha risen, the taller officer said. We need you to come with us. I glanced at Marcus's hiding spot, but there was no sign of him. He had vanished like a ghost. I was alone, facing the 2 officers, my aunt's pleading eyes boring into my back. What are the charges? I asked, forcing my voice to remain steady. The officer didn't answer. He just gestured toward the door. Please come with us, ma'am. We'll explain everything at the station. I took a deep breath. I had known this was a possibility. I had prepared for it. But now that it was happening, I felt a cold wave of fear crash over me. I had underestimated Emily. She had moved faster than I expected. She had turned the tables, made me the villain again. But I wasn't going to let them win. Not now. Not ever. Fine, I said, lifting my chin. I'll come with you. But I want to call my lawyer. The officer nodded, and I followed him toward the door. As I walked past my aunt, she grabbed my room one last time, her fingers digging into my skin like claws. Della, she whispered, her voice cracking. You don't know what you're doing. This is bigger than you think. There are people involved, powerful people, who will not let you get away with this. I looked into her eyes, and for the first time, I saw something there that I hadn't expected. Fear. Not fear for me, not fear for the family name. Fear for herself. She was hiding something. She knew more than she was letting on. What people? I asked, my voice low. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, the officer pulled me toward the door. Let's go, Miss ha risen. I stumbled forward, my heels clicking unevenly against the marble floor. I looked back over my shoulder, and I saw my aunt standing in the middle of the lobby, her hands trembling at her sides, her face white as chalk. She looked like a woman who had just seen a ghost. The night air hit my face as I stepped outside, cold and sharp. The police car was waiting at the curb, its lights flashing silently. I climbed into the back seat, and as the door closed behind me, I caught a glimpse of Marcus Webb standing across the street, his phone pressed to his car, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. The car pulled away from the curb, and I watched the Hotel de Snappy in the side mirror. The city lights blurred past me, streaks of gold and red and white. I leaned my head against the ciel glass of the window and closed my eyes. I had set the trap. I had caught them. But somewhere along the way, I had stepped into a much bigger trap of my own. The fluorescent lights in the interrogation room hummed like a trapped fly, buzzing in my skull with a rhythm that made my teeth ache. I had been sitting in this metal chair for 3 hours. My back was killing me, the cheap painkillers I'd taken this morning had long worn off, and my thrift store dress was rooting to smell like stale cigarette smoke and fear. Across the table, Detective Morrison flipped through a manila folder with the kind of theatrical slowness that was meant to unnerve me. It was working. Let's go over this one more time, Miss ha risen, he said, not looking up from the papers. You claim you had nothing to do with the footage that was shown at the engagement party. Is that correct? I pressed my palms flat against the cold metal table. That's what I've been telling you for 3 hours. I didn't hack anything. I didn't break into any server room. I don't even know how to hack into a hotel security system. I can figure out how to change the Wi-Fi password in my own apartment. He finally looked up, and his eyes were the color of wet concrete. He had the kind of face that had seen too many bad things, too many liars and too many confessions. Then how did it happen the hotel manager is prepper read to testify that he saw you in the server room at 2 a.m. last Tuesday? He's got security footage of a woman who looks exactly like you. He's got a signed statement. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. That's not me. It can't be. I was at home last Tuesday. I was working on my laptop until 3 a.m. My building has security cameras. You can check them. We will, he said, leaning back in his chair. But in the meantime, I've got a very upset hotel manager, a very upset bride, and a very upset groom's lawyer who's already filed a restraining order against you. You're not allowed within 500 feet of your sister or your ex-fiancé for the next 6 months. Violate that, and you go to jail. No warnings, no second chances. I laughed, but it came out hollow and desperate. They're the ones who should be in jail. They stole millions from my father. They ruined my life. And you're letting them file a restraining order against me. Morrison's face didn't change. That's not my Deppard meant, Miss H.A. Risen. I'm just here to investigate the break-in. If you have evidence of fraud, you need to take it to the district attorney's office. But I'm telling you right now, if you did break into that server room, if you did tamper with that footage, you're looking at felony charges. We're not talking about a slap on the wrist here. We're talking about RS in prison. He stood up, pushing his chair back with a screech that made me wince. I'm going to step out for a few minutes. Think about what I've said. If you want to confess, you'd better do it now. Because once I file this report, there's no going back. The door clicked shut behind him, and I was alone again. The hum of the fluorescent light seemed to grow louder, pressing against my eardrums. I leaned forward and rested my forehead on the CL metal table. My hands were shaking. I could see the fine tremor in my fingers, the way my nails were bitten down to the quick from months of stress. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe. That I had known this was a risk. I had known that Emily would fight back. But I hadn't expected her to be so fast, so ruthless. She had already planted the evidence, already turned the hotel manager against me. I was a step behind, and in this game, being a step behind meant you were losing. The door opened again, and I looked up, expecting Morrison to come back with another folder of incriminating evidence. But instead, a woman walked in. She was in her late 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a simple blue dress and ride a leather briefcase that looked like it cost more than my rent. I recognized her immediately. Her name was Patricia Vance, and she was the best criminal defense attorney in the state. She had represented half the wealthy families in the city, and she had never lost a case. Ella H.A. Risen, she said, her voice crisp and businesslike. I'm your lawyer. I read at her, my mouth hanging open. I didn't call you. I don't have money for a lawyer. I don't have money for anything. She pulled out a chair and sat down across from me, placing her briefcase on the table with a solid thunk. You don't have to worry about that. Your legal fees have been taken care of. I was hired by a mutual acquaintance who wishes to remain anonymous. Let's just say he's very interested in making sure you don't end up in prison. I knew immediately who she was talking about. Marcus Webb. He had moved faster than I had expected. He had already gotten me a lawyer, already root building my defense. But I didn't know if I could trust him. I didn't know if he was trying to protect me or just trying to protect his story. You're working for Marcus Webb, I said flatly. Patricia's lips curved into a thin smile. I'm working for you, Miss H.A. Risen. Mr. Webb just happens to be paying the bills. Now, let's get down to business. You're going to tell me everything. And I mean everything. I can't defend you if I don't know the whole truth. I hesitated for a moment, but then I root talking. I told her about Derek's business scheme, the shell companies in the Caymans, the forged documents that made me look like the one who had made the bad investments. I told her about the months of planning, the burner phones, the late-night meetings with my source, a former hotel security guard who had been fired by the hotel manager after he refused to falsify a report. I told her about the footage, how I had gotten it, how I had planned the reveal down to the last second. When I finished, Patricia was silent for a long moment. She had been taking notes in a small leather-bound notebook, her pen moving with quick, precise strokes. Finally, she looked up and met my eyes. That's a very well-constructed plan, she said. But you made one mistake. What, you trusted your source too much? The security guard you mentioned, he's missing. He hasn't been seen since the day before the party. His apartment is empty, his phone is disconnected, and nobody knows where he went. The blood drained from my face. What? No. That can't be right. He was supposed to meet me yesterday. We had a time and a place. He was going to give me the final set of files, the ones that proved Derek's involvement in the embezzlement scheme. Patricia shook her head slowly. He didn't show up. And I think we both know why. Derek and Emily got to him. They either bought him off or they read him off. Either way, he's gone, and so is the evidence he was going to give you. I slumped back in my chair, my mind reeling. This was worse than I had imagined. My source was gone. The evidence was gone. Without those files, I had nothing but hotel footage of an affair. And that wasn't enough to bring down Derek and Emily. It wasn't even close. There has to be something else, I said, my voice desperate. I made copies. I have backups. Patricia leaned forward, her eyes shot where are the copies in my apartment. In a lockbox under my bed. I also have a second set hidden in a safety deposit box at the bank downtown. You need to get those copies, she said. Right now. Because if Derek and Emily find them before we do, they'll destroy them. They'll do whatever it takes to make sure you never see the light of day. I nodded, my heart pounding. I can get them. But I need to get out of here first. Morrison said he's filing the report today. He's not going to let me go. Patricia smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who had been waiting for this moment. Let me worry about Morrison. I've been practicing law for 25 years. I know how to handle men like him. You just stay calm, answer his questions, and let me do the talking. When I say you're leaving, you're leaving. Understood, I nodded again, and she stood up, walking to the door and opening it. Detective Morrison. Could you step in here for a moment? Morrison walked back into the room, his face a mask of professional indifference. Patricia turned to him, her voice dripping with concealed contempt. Detective, I have reviewed the evidence against my client, and I have to say, it's flimsy at best. You have a security guard who claims he saw her in the server room, but you have no fingerprints, no DNA, no direct evidence that she tampered with the footage. You have circumstantial evidence at best, and in my experience, a good lawyer can tr circumstantial evidence apart in court. Morrison's eyes narrowed. We're still investigating, Mrs. Vance. We haven't filed charges yet. Then you won't mind if I take my client home, Patricia said, her tone leaving no room for argument. She's been here for 3 hours. She hasn't slept, she hasn't eaten, and she's clearly in distress. If you want to question her further, you can do it through me. But for now, she's leaving. Morrison opened his mouth to protest, but Patricia had already grabbed my arm and was pulling me toward the door. Come on, Ella. We're going. I stumbled out of the interrogation room, my legs shaking. The fluorescent lights in the hallway were just as harsh, but at least they weren't buzzing in my ears anymore. Patricia walked me past the front desk, past the officers who read at me with cold, unreadable eyes, and out into the CL night air. The sky was dark, the streetlights casting long, yellow shadows on the pavement. I took a deep breath, and the air tasted like freedom. Patricia led me to a black sedan parked at the curb, and I climbed into the passenger seat, my hands still trembling. Thank you, I said, My voice ba rely above a whisper. Patricia got into the driver's seat and sta root the engine. Don't thank me yet. We still have a long way to go. Now, where's that safety deposit box? I gave her the address of the bank, and she pulled away from the curb. The car gliding through the empty streets. The city was quiet at this hour, the streets slick with dew. I watched the buildings pass by, each one a blur of glass and steel. We need to move fast, Patricia said, her eyes fixed on the road. Derek and Emily know you have evidence. They'll be watching your apartment. They might even have people following you. We need to get to that deposit box and then we need to find a safe place for you to stay. I don't have anywhere to go, I said, the words heavy in my mouth. I can't afford a hotel. I can't afford anything. Patricia glanced at me, her expression softening slightly. I have a place. It's not much, but it's secure. You can stay there for a few days while we figure out our next move. I nodded, too tired to argue. The car turned a corner, and I saw the bank building ahead, a squat concrete structure with a single light burning in the window. Patricia pulled into the parking lot and killed the engine. Stay here, she said. I'll go in and get the box. I'll be right back. She got out of the car and walked toward the bank, her heels clicking on the pavement. I watched her go, my heart racing. I didn't know if I could trust her. I didn't know if I could trust anyone. But right now, she was all I had. That I leaned my head against the window and closed my eyes. The events of the past 12 hours were finally catching up with me, and I felt the exhaustion pulling at my limbs like lead weights. I was just rooting to drift off when I heard a sound. A soft scraping noise, coming from the back of the car. I turned around, my heart pounding. And then I saw them. Two pairs of eyes, glowing in the darkness. My scream caught in my throat. The two glowing eyes blinked, and then a familiar voice cut through the darkness. Gala. It's me. Don't scream. I recognized the voice immediately. It was Marcus Webb. He was crouched on the floor of the back seat, his dark suit blending into the shadows. I could make out his face in the dim light filtering through the windshield. What the hell are you doing? I hissed, my heart still hammering against my ribs. You almost gave me a heart attack. He shifted, pulling himself up onto the seat. Sorry. I needed to talk to you without Patricia knowing. She's good at her job, but she's also a blabbermouth. She tells her husband everything, and her husband plays poker with Derek's lawyer once a month. I couldn't take the risk. I read at him, my mind racing. You planted her. She's your pawn. Marcus shook his head. She's not a pawn. She's a tool. A very useful tool. She'll get you out of trouble, but she's also a liability. I needed to warn you. Warn me about what? He leaned forward, his face inches from mine. His breath smelled like coffee and something sharper, like adrenaline. The security guard road. The one who helped you. He's not missing. He's dead. They found his body in the river this morning. The police are recalling it a suicide, but I know it wasn't. Derek had him killed, Ella. And if Derek is willing to kill a security guard, he's willing to kill you. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs, felt the world tilt around me. My source was dead. The man who had risked everything to help me was dead, and it was my fault. If I hadn't asked him for help, if I hadn't dragged him into my mess, he would still be alive. I didn't know, I whispered, my voice cracking. I didn't think they would go that far. Marcus grabbed my shoulders, his grip firm and steadying. Listen to me. This isn't your fault. Derek is a monster. He's been a monster for a long time. I've been investigating him for years, but I never had enough evidence to bring him down. You have that evidence. You have the key to everything. But you need to stay alive long enough to use it. I nodded, my hands trembling. Patricia is getting the safety deposit box. The bank records, the emails, the proof of the embezzlement. It's all in there. Americus shook his head. The safety deposit box is a decoy. I told Patricia to get it because I needed to get her out of the way. The real evidence is somewhere else. Somewhere Derek and Emily don't know about. ISTA read at him, confusion flooding my brain. What are you talking about? There is no other evidence. The safety deposit box is all I have. Americus reached into his jacket and pulled out a small flash drive. He pressed it into my palm, his fingers cold against my skin. This is the real evidence. I've been working with your source for the past 3 months. He gave me copies of everything before he died. The bank statements, the emails, the recordings. It's all here. Everything you need to bring down Derek and Emily and everyone else involved. I looked down at the flash drive in my hand. It was small and unremarkable, a cheap plastic thing you could buy at any electronics store. But it held the power to destroy the people who had ruined my life. It held the power to set me free. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice rely above a whisper. Why did you let me believe I was alone? Americus's eyes softened. Because I needed you to be desperate. I needed you to be pushed to the edge. That's the only way you would have walked into that engagement party and done what you did. If you had known you had a safety net, you might have hesitated. And hesitation would have gotten you killed. I opened my mouth to respond, but the car door opened, and Patricia slid into the driver's seat. She froze when she saw Americus in the back seat, her eyes widening. What the hell, she said, her voice sharp. Americus, what are you doing here? Americus gave her a thin smile. Just checking on my investment. Did you get the box? Patricia held up a small metal box. Yes. It's locked. I'll need to find a locksmith to open it. Don't bother, Americus said. It's empty. I took the contents out 3 days ago. The box was just a distraction. A way to keep Ella moving while I set up the real plan. Patricia's face flushed with anger. You used me. You sent me in there to get an empty box while you played hero. Americus shrugged. I used everyone. That's how this works. Now, we need to move. Derek's people are watching the bank. They know Ella has evidence, and they're going to try to stop her. We need to get to my safe house before they find us. Patricia root the engine, her jaw tight. Fine. But you and I are going to have a long conversation about this later. And you're going to pay me double for the trouble. We'll talk about it later, Americus said. Right now, we need to focus on getting out of here alive. The car pulled out of the parking lot, and I watched the bank building disappear in the side mirror. My heart was still racing, my hands still trembling. I clutched the flash drive in my palm, feeling the rough plastic edges dig into my skin. This was it. This was the evidence I needed. But I also knew that having it meant I was now the target. Derek and Emily would stop at nothing to get it back. Americus leaned forward and tapped Patricia on the shoulder. Take a left here. We need to lose anyone who might be following us. Patricia nodded and turned the wheel sharply. The car swerved around a corner, tires squealing against the pavement. I gripped the door handle, my knuckles white. Who's following us? I asked, my voice shaky. Americus didn't answer. Instead, he turned to look out the back window, his eyes scanning the dark street behind us. I followed his gaze, but I couldn't see anything. Just empty roads and yellow streetlights. I don't see anyone, I said. Neither do I, Americus replied. That's what worries me. Patricia drove for another 20 minutes. Weaving through side streets and back alleys. Finally, she pulled up in front of a small house on a quiet residential street. It was modest, with peeling paint and an overgrown lawn, but it looked secure. Americus motioned for us to get out. We'll stay here tonight, he said. Tomorrow, we start building the case. We have the evidence, but we need to present it in a way that can't be dismissed. We need a plan. We followed him into the house. The interior was spa RSE, with basic furniture and no personal belongings. It was a safe house, a place where no one would think to look for us. Americus locked the door behind us and pulled the blinds shut. That make yourself comfortable, he said, gesturing to a worn-out couch. I'll make some coffee. We have a long night ahead of us. I sat down on the couch, my legs finally giving out. The exhaustion I had been holding at bay crashed over me like a tidal wave. I leaned back against the cushions and closed my eyes. I could hear Patricia and Americus talking in the kitchen, their voices low and urgent. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the tension in their tones. I opened my eyes and looked at the flash drive in my hand. It was incredible to think that something so small could hold so much power. My father had died because of what was on this drive. My source had died because of it. And now, I was the only one left to carry the burden. That Americus came back into the room with 3 mugs of coffee. He handed one to me, and I wrapped my hands around the ceramic. The heat seeped into my fingers, grounding me. Drink up, he said. You're going to need it. I took a sip, and the bitterness of the coffee burned my tongue. But it was a good kind of burn, a wake-up call to my exhausted body. I felt my mind clear, my thoughts sharpening. There's something I don't understand, I said, looking at Americus. Why me? Why did you choose me for this? You could have gone to the police. You could have written the story without me. Americus sat down across from me, his face serious. Because you're the one person Derek and Emily underestimated. You're the one who was closest to them, who knew their weaknesses. I've been watching you for months, Ella. I saw how you held yourself together after your father died. I saw how you fought to survive. You're not just a victim. You're a survivor. I looked down at my coffee, the words settling into my chest. I didn't feel like a survivor. I felt like a woman who had been pushed to the edge and was holding on. But Americus's words gave me a small sliver of hope. Patricia came into the room, her face pale. I just got a call from a contact at the police station. Derek has filed a complaint against Ella for theft. He's claiming she stole the flash drive from his office. They're issuing an arrest warrant right now. The coffee mug slipped from my fingers and shattered on the floor. Brown liquid splattered across the worn carpet, but I didn't notice. All I could hear was the word arrest warrant echoing in my head. They're trying to pin it on me, I said, my voice hollow. They're going to make it look like I stole from them. Americus nodded, his expression grim. That's exactly what they're doing. And with the security guard dead, there's no one to testify that you weren't the one who broke into the server room. It's your word against theirs, and right now, their word has a lot more weight. What do we do? I asked, my voice above a whisper. Americus looked at me, his eyes hard and determined. We fight back. We take the evidence we have and we make it public. We don't wait for the police. We don't wait for the court. We go straight to the press, and we tell the world the truth. Patricia shook her head. That's dangerous. If we go public, Derek and Emily will have even more reason to come after us. We need to be smart about this. We don't have time to be smart, America said. We have to be fast. Ella, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? I looked at him for a long moment. His face was serious, his eyes intense. I had no reason to trust him. He had manipulated me, used me, kept secrets from me. But he had also kept me alive. He had given me the tools I needed to fight back. Yes, I said finally. I trust you. America smiled, and for the first time, it was a genuine smile, not the cold, calculating grin of a journalist hunting a story. Good. Then let's get to work. The coffee was cold by the time I finished reading every file on that flash drive. I had been sitting at the kitchen table for 4 hours, my eyes burning, my fingers numb from scrolling through page after page of bank statements, email chains, and recorded phone calls. The evidence was damning. Derek hadn't just stolen from my father. He had systematically dismantled the company piece by piece, funneling millions into offshore accounts while making it look like my father was the one who had made the bad decisions. The emails proved it. The recordings proved it. And now, with the security guard dead and the police closing in, I had to decide what to do with all of it. America sat across from me, nursing his own cold cup of coffee. He hadn't slept either. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw tight with tension. Patricia had fallen asleep on the couch an hour ago, her snoring a soft, rhythmic counterpoint to the silence of the house. There's enough here to put him away for 20 years, America said, his voice low. Maybe more. But we need to be smart about how we release it. If we just dump it all online, it'll get lost in the noise. We need a single, focused blow that hits him where it hurts. I looked up from the screen, my eyes blurry. Like what? Americus leaned forward, his elbows on the table. Like a press conference. We invite every major news outlet in the city. We lay out the evidence piece by piece. We make it impossible for them to ignore. And we do it before Derek and Emily can spin the narrative. I shook my head. That's too public. They'll come after us. They'll try to shut us down. They'll try, Americus agreed. But they won't succeed. Not if we do it right. I've been doing this for 20 years, Ella. I know how to handle people like Derek. They're bullies. They thrive on fear. But once you expose them in the light, they crumble. I looked down at the flash drive in my hand. The weight of it felt heavier than it should. This was my father's legacy, my source's sacrifice, and my own desperate gamble. If I did this, there was no going back. I would be putting myself in the crosshairs of people who had already killed to protect their secrets. But if I didn't do it, I would be running for the rest of my life. I would be looking over my shoulder every day, waiting for Derek's next move. And I couldn't live like that. I couldn't let him win. Okay, I said finally. Let's do it. Americus nodded, a grim smile spreading across his face. Good. I'll start making calls. We'll hold the press conference tomorrow morning at the City Hall press room. Patricia will be there to handle any legal questions. I'll be there to handle the media. And you'll be there to tell your story. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I have to speak, you have to speak, America said. You're the face of this. You're the one who lost everything. You're the one who fought back. If I tell the story, it's just another journalist trying to make a name for himself. If you tell the story, it's a woman who refused to be silenced. That's what will make people listen. I nodded, my throat tight. I had never been good at speaking in public. I had always been the quiet one, the one who let others take the lead. But now, I had no choice. I had to find my voice. The hours passed in a blur of phone calls and frantic planning. Americus worked his contacts, securing commitments from every major news outlet in the city. Patricia reviewed the evidence, making sure there were no loopholes that Derek's lawyers could exploit. I sat in the corner, my mind racing, trying to find the words I would say. By dawn, we were ready. Americus had arranged for a CAR to pick us up and take us to City Hall. Patricia had read a legal brief that outlined the evidence in clear, damning detail. I had written and rewritten my speech a dozen times, but none of the versions felt right. I had to speak from the HERT we piled into the CAR, a nondescript sedan that wouldn't draw attention. Patricia sat in the front seat, her phone pressed to her EAR, coordinating with her contacts. Americus sat next to me in the back, his face a mask of concentration. Are you ready? He asked. That I shook my head. No. But I don't think I'll ever be ready. I'll just have to do it anyway. He reached over and squeezed my hand. It was a small gesture, but it meant more than he probably realized. For the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't alone. The CAR pulled up to City Hall, and I stepped out into the cold morning air. The building loomed above me, a gray stone monolith that had witnessed countless political scandals and public hearings. Today, it would witness mine. We walked through the heavy oak doors and into the press room. It was already packed with journalists, their cameras and microphones pointed at the podium like weapons. I felt my knees go weak, but I forced myself to keep walking. Americus led me to a seat at the front of the room, and Patricia took her place beside me. Just follow my lead, Americus whispered. When I introduce you, stand up and walk to the podium. Take a deep breath. And tell them the truth. I nodded, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure the journalists could hear it. Americus stepped up to the podium, and the room fell silent. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice clear and steady. Thank you for coming on such short notice. I know you all have a lot of questions, and I promise you, they will be answered. But first, I'd like to introduce someone who has been through more than anyone should have to endure. Please welcome LHA Risen. I stood up on shaky legs and walked to the podium. The lights were blinding, the cameras closing in like hungry vultures. I gripped the edges of the podium, my knuckles white, and I took a deep breath. My name is LHA Risen, I said, my voice trembling. And I'm here today because I refuse to let the people who destroyed my family get away with it. The room erupted in flashes and clicks, but I forced myself to continue. I told them about my father, about the company he had built from nothing. I told them about Derek, about the scheme he had orchestrated to steal everything. I told them about Emily, about the betrayal that had cut deeper than any financial loss. And I told them about the evidence, the bank statements, the emails, the recordings that proved every word I was saying. By the time I finished, there were tears streaming down my face. I hadn't even realized I was crying. The room was silent, the journalists frozen in their seats. I had told them the truth, and now it was out there, unstoppable. That I stepped back from the podium, and Patricia stood up to field the questions. Americus put a hand on my shoulder, guiding me toward the side exit. You did good, he said. You did really good. We made it to the hallway before the first wave of texts came in. Americus's phone buzzed with notifications. Patricia's phone joined in. And then my own phone, the cheap burner I had been using for months, rude vibrating in my pocket. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. It was a text from an unknown number. Congratulations, Ella. You're harder to kill than I thought. But the game isn't over. Watch your back. The phone slipped from my fingers and clattered to the floor. I read at the screen, my blood running cold. He knew. Derek knew what I had done. He was watching. Ella, Americus's voice was sharp with concern. What happened? I bent down and picked up the phone, my hands shaking. Derek knows. He sent me a text. Americus took the phone from my hands and read the message. His face went pale. We need to get you out of here. Now. He grabbed my ARM and pulled me toward the back exit, Patricia following close behind. We burst through the door and into the parking lot, our footsteps echoing in the empty space. And then I saw him. Derek was standing by a black SUV, his arms crossed, a cold smile on his face. Emily was beside him, her eyes filled with a hatred so pure it burned. Ella, Derek said, his voice smooth as glass. I was hoping to run into you. I stopped in my tracks, my heart hammering. Americus stepped in front of me, his body shielding me from Derek's gaze. Step away from her, Derek. This is over. Derek laughed, a hollow, humorless sound. It's far from over. You think you've won. You think a few pieces of paper are going to bring me down. I have lawyers, Ella. I have money. I have influence. And I have friends in very high places. He took a step forward, and Americus tensed. What are you going to do? Kill me in front of witnesses? Derek's smile widened. I don't need to kill you, Ella. I just need to destroy you. And I know exactly how to do it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He tossed it at my feet. Read it. It's an affidavit from your Aunt Marga Rhett. She's willing to testify that you knew about the embezzlement scheme from the beginning. That you were a willing participant. That you helped me steal from your father. The blood drained from my face. That's a lie. Marga Rhett would never, Marga Rhett would do anything to protect herself, Derek interrupted. She's been skimming from the company accounts for YRS. She knows that if you bring me down, she'll go down with me. So she's decided to throw you under the bus instead. She's going to testify that you were the mastermind. And with her word against yours, who do you think the jury will believe? I read at the paper on the ground, my mind reeling. My own aunt. The woman who had raised me after my mother died. She was going to betray me to save herself. Don't listen to him, Marga said, his voice urgent. He's trying to scare you. It's working, I whispered. Derek chuckled. You should have stayed in your lane, Ella. You should have kept your head down and accepted your fate. But you had to be a hero. And now, you're going to pay the price. He turned and walked back to his SUV, Emily following like a shadow. I watched them drive away, the black car disappearing into the morning traffic that I sank to my knees, my whole body shaking. The affidavit lay in front of me, my aunt's signature clear and damning. I had lost. I had lost before I even sta root. But then I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Patricia. Her face was soft, her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Compassion. That you haven't lost, Ella, she said quietly. Not yet. Derek is betting that you'll give up. But you're not a quitter. You never have been. I looked up at her, tears streaming down my face. What do I do? Patricia knelt down beside me. You fight. You find your aunt and you make her tell the truth. You don't let Derek win. I nodded slowly, the pieces clicking into place in my mind. I had been running for so long, reacting to every blow. But now, it was time to take control. It was time to fight back. I stood up, wiping the tears from my face. Find Marga Rhett, find her before Derek does. Marga nodded, already pulling out his phone. I'll make some calls. Patricia, you stay with Ella. Don't let her out of your sight. We moved quickly, piling back into the car. The city blurred past us, but I wasn't looking at the streets. I was looking ahead, Tawa RD, the next move, the next challenge that I had been knocked down. But I wasn't out. The rain sta root falling just as we pulled up to my aunt's house. It came down in sheets, hammering against the roof of the car like 1,000 tiny fists. I sat in the passenger seat, my hands clenched in my lap, sta ring at the familiar white colonial with its wrap-a round porch and perfectly manicured hedges. This was the house where I had spent every summer as a child. This was the house where my mother had taught me to bake pies in the kitchen, where my father had taught me to ride a bike on the driveway. And now, it was the house where my aunt was planning to destroy me. Are you sure you want to do this alone? Marga asked from the back seat. I can come with you. I shook my head. No. This is something I have to do myself. She's my family. She's my blood. If I can't face her alone, then I don't deserve to win this fight. Patricia reached over and squeezed my hand. We'll be right here if you need us. Just call, and we'll come running. I nodded, took a deep breath, and opened the car door. The rain hit me instantly, soaking through my thin jacket and plastering my hair to my scalp. I walked up the driveway, my footsteps splashing through puddles, my heart pounding in my chest. The front door was painted a cheerful shade of yellow, but it looked dull and lifeless in the gray light of the storm. I knocked 3 times, hard enough to make my knuckles ache. I heard footsteps inside, slow and hesitant. Then the door opened a crack, and my Aunt Marga Rhett's face red in the gap. She looked older than I remembered. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her cheeks hollow, her hair streaked with gray that hadn't been there a month ago. She looked like a woman who had been carrying a heavy burden for too long. Ella, she said, her voice rely above a whisper. I was wondering when you'd come. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house was dark, the curtains drawn, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and loneliness. My aunt closed the door behind me and leaned against it, her hands trembling. "I know why you're here," she said. "Derek called me. He told me you confronted him. He told me about the press conference." "Then you know what he's planning to do," I said, my voice flat. "He's going to use you to destroy me. He's going to make you testify that I was the mastermind behind the embezzlement. He's going to make you lie." My aunt's face crumpled. TRS spilled down her cheeks, cutting tracks through her makeup. "I didn't want to, Ella. You have to believe me. He threatened me. He said if I didn't cooperate, he would expose my own dealings. He said he would ruin me, take everything I have." I was SCA red. I'm still SCA red. I took a step toward her, my voice softening. "I know you're SCA red, and MARGA red. But what he's asking you to do is wrong. You know it's wrong. My father trusted you. He loved you. And you're going to betray his memory by lying under oath." She shook her head, her sobs becoming louder. "I don't have a choice. I don't have any money left. I've been skimming from the company accounts for YARS, trying to keep up appearances. When Derek found out, he used it to blackmail me. He said if I didn't do what he wanted, he would send me to prison." I reached out and took her hands. They were cold and shaking. "Aunt MARGA ret, listen to me. I have evidence. I have enough evidence to put Derek away for a very long time. But I need your help. I need you to tell the truth. I need you to stand up to him." She looked at me, her eyes wide and desperate. "I can't. He'll destroy me. He'll take everything. He's going to destroy you anyway," I said, my voice firm. "If you lie for him, you'll go to prison. If you tell the truth, you'll have a chance. I'll help you. I'll get you a lawyer. I'll make sure you're protected. But you have to make the choice. You have to choose what kind of person you want to be." For a long moment, she just read at me. The rain hammered against the windows, filling the silence with its relentless drumming. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do it. I'll tell the truth." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, so powerful it made my knees weak. I pulled her into a hug, holding her tight. "Thank you," I murmured into her hair. "Thank you." We spent the next hour talking. My aunt told me everything. She told me about the YARS of skimming, the small amounts she had taken to pay for the house repairs, the medical bills, the endless expenses that had piled up after my uncle died. She told me about how Derek had discovered her secret and used it to manipulate her. She told me about the nights she had lain awake, guilt eating away at her, knowing she was betraying the family she loved. By the time we finished, the rain had stopped. The sun was breaking through the clouds, casting pale golden light across the living room floor. My aunt looked lighter, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice small. "Now," I said, "we go to the police. We give them a signed statement. And then we let the law do its work." Americus and Patricia met us at the CAR. My aunt looked nervous, but she held her head high. We drove to the police station, and I watched as my aunt walked through the doors, Patricia at her side. Americus and I waited in the CAR, the silence between us heavy with anticipation. "She's going to do it, isn't she?" I asked, more a statement than a question. Americus nodded. "She's going to do it. And once she does, Derek and Emily are finished." It took 3 hours. 3 hours of waiting, watching the police station doors, my heart racing with every passing minute. And then Patricia came out, a smile on her face. "Stuff gets done," she said. "Your aunt gave a full confession. She named Derek as the blackmailer and confirmed everything you said at the press conference. The police are reissuing a warrant for his arrest as we speak." I felt the tension drain from my body. It was over. It was finally over. But Americus shook his head. "It's not over yet. Derek knows we're coming. He's going to try to run. We need to move fast. He sta root the car and pulled out of the parking lot, tires squealing. We drove across the city, weaving through traffic, heading Tawa RD the airport. Americas had a contact at the airport who had confirmed that Derek had booked a private jet to a country with no extradition treaty. He was trying to escape. We arrived at the private terminal just as Derek was walking Tawa RD the plane. Emily was with him, clutching a designer handbag, her face pale. They saw us and froze. Derek. Americas shouted. It's over. The police are on their way. There's nowhere to run. Derek's face twisted with rage. He pushed Emily Tawa RD the plane and sta route running. I ran after him, my legs pumping, my lungs burning. I caught up with him just as he reached the steps of the jet. I grabbed his ARM and spun him around. You're not getting away this time, I said, my voice harrowed. You're going to face justice. He tried to pull away, but Americas was there, blocking his path. Patricia had Emily cornered near the terminal door. The sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. And then the police SWA med in, blue uniforms and flashing lights. They handcuffed Derek and Emily, reading them their rights. I watched as they were led away, their faces masks of shock and disbelief. I stood there, breathless, my heart pounding. The rain had sta root again, a gentle drizzle that clad my flushed skin. I looked up at the gray sky and felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. It was over. I had won. That Americas came up beside me, his face tired but satisfied. You did it, he said. You actually did it. I turned to him, a small smile playing on my lips. We did it. He smiled back, and for a moment, we just stood there in the rain, two people who had been through hell together and come out the other side. That I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know how I was going to rebuild my life, pay off the debts, or find a four-way road. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something I had almost forgotten, hope. I took a deep breath, looked at the sky, and let the rain wash away the last traces of my old life. This was my beginning.